I know that a lot of my content on this channel is about understanding the red flags, finding the red flags, identifying a toxic relationship, what makes a toxic relationship, all those things we talk about on this channel. But what happens when we realize we're in the toxic relationship, we do the work to exit stage right, and now we're on our own? How do we begin to make the changes in our life? How do we begin to power up ourselves and really be able to figure out who we truly are as an individual? That's the direction that I want to take this channel into at this point, because I think that we know about the toxic relationships. We will talk about cluster B dynamic. We're not going to stop talking about it. We're not going to stop talking about narcissism. But we need to talk about what do we do once we figure this out, how do we move forward in a healthy way? And I think that's really, really important, because we have the ideas of what makes somebody narcissistic. We understand that there's a lot of that on our planet. Some people will argue with us, but I really believe that there's a lot of people that have a lot of signs and symptoms of narcissism and other different types of aspects of things that we've talked about on this channel. Doesn't make it bad or good, but the interesting part about it is that we don't have to live with it. It's something that we don't have to deal with on a daily basis if we choose not to. And so I think that now that we're kind of in the space where it's like, okay, I'm going to try to figure out what's healthy for me. I'm going to try to figure out who I am, find the blueprint in my life of who I really am as an individual, and then what I bring to the table, and then what I'm also looking for other people in my life, whether it's romantic or friendship or even a work colleague. You know, how are we going to interact? What kind of relationships am I looking for? And how true am I being to myself? And so the first thing that I wanted to talk about on this video is really being able to identify you as an individual. What do you stand for? What are the values that you stand for? What are the things that are very important to you? What are the things in your life that you have to have in your life no matter what? And what do other people have to bring to the table to be able to interact with you? I think that one of the big reasons why a lot of us find ourselves in these toxic relationships in the past is because we just accepted people because we didn't want to be alone, or they presented themselves differently in the beginning, and so we allowed the red flags to be. Perhaps we wanted that attention and they were giving us that attention that we wanted, but eventually things changed. And so we've taken the blinders off. We begin to realize maybe a lot of our aspects of our life, maybe some codependency and some issues from childhood that we've discovered that have actually led us into these types of relationships. And so it's very important that we're there. But now, what do we do next? So first off, the biggest thing that I found that really works is to begin to understand who we are as a person by understanding the values that we really, I guess, gravitate to. And it's not like this altruistic thing like, oh, what are the values and what does that mean? And it's more like the best way to look at it is what are the things that you sacrifice in these last toxic relationships that you don't want to sacrifice again? What are some of the values in your life? What are some of the things that you had to sacrifice? I know that many of my clients have talked about sacrificing relationships with their family dynamic or friends. Perhaps their significant other at the time didn't really want them around anybody, didn't want them talking to anybody. And that's something that's very challenging because, well, it's not right. It's not healthy. We want our friends around. We want our family around. These are things that are very important to us. And so reconnecting with those relationships, but also asking ourselves, why do we allow to go through that in the first place? I know to try to save the relationship, to get this person to stop arguing or fighting with you, all these different reasons why we do what we do. But looking back at that, it's interesting because I think that we find ourselves going down that slippery slope where we agree to one thing, then agree to another thing, and agree to another thing. And all of a sudden we look back and we can't even identify ourselves anymore. We don't even know who we are anymore because we're no longer who we actually felt like we were. And so that's one of the biggest things that I want us to start with are the relationships and the values and the things that you sacrifice in order to continue to stay in the relationship that ultimately was doomed anyway. And so thinking about that stuff, writing that down in a journal, thinking about the things that you felt bad about, thinking about the things that really hurt your feelings or really upset you or really put you into a negative mood or put you into a depression during that relationship, and think about how the impact of that is. And then also looking at it and saying, okay, what are the things that I'm not ever going to do? What are the things that I'm not ever going to allow in my life again? Whether it's to cut off, I'm not going to cut off my parents, or I'm not going to cut off my best friends that really matter to me, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to go back to school, or I'm going to do that full-time job that I always plan. I'm not going to be a stay-at-home person. Whatever that looks like, it's about getting your power back and analyzing what makes my life good, what makes my life feel healthy and joy-filled. and what are my choices instead of what are the choices that other people have for me. So we'll be talking about this in length on this channel. We're definitely not going to totally abandon the stuff that we've been talking about, but I think it's time to figure out about recovery, moving on, and finding that healthy relationship. Looking forward to this. In the meantime, don't forget to live your true life.